Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased here to be joined with Loren Murray, environmental scientist, and we're going to have a far-reaching conversation on a wide variety of mind-blowing topics. I am Daryl Hamamoto, professor at UC Davis, Department of Asian American Studies. Loren, it's really great to be with you here today.
Thank you very much, Daryl.
Why don't you lead in on some of the fascinating research that you've been doing?
Well, I'm a UC Davis grad. I graduated in 1968, one of the first women in the geology department. And I came back in the 90s to do my PhD in the ancient history of the Earth's magnetic field, going back 25 million years. And then I met a very interesting man in Livermore. When I was living there, I became a Livermore lab whistleblower, nuclear weapons lab, and his name was Marion Falk, and he started teaching me about radiation. And so I became an international specialist on radiation, and finally, one day, Daryl, I said, this global pollution with radiation that's killing the whole biosphere is omnicide. It's suicide, homicide, ecocide is every kind of death. But basically it's a death across the whole earth of all living things. And finally I said, this just cannot be an accident. And I sat down at my computer about 6 years ago, and I Googled University of California plus weapons of mass destruction.
So we're talking about 2010.
Yes.
Roughly.
I'm sorry, it was University of California plus Skull and Bones.
Plus Skull and Bones, oh yes.
Yes.
The Russell Trust.
Yes, and that took me down a rabbit hole. I'm still going down because now I'm investigating who's at the very top, who really rules the world, and I discovered it's a very, very interesting history of ancient Iranian tribes, the original Zoroastrians, and the first world Persian Empire that has controlled the world for the last 5,000 years. And so that brings us to UC Davis and what is occurring now with what was a covert presence of the Jesuits who, and Monsanto, because it's an agricultural college, and Monsanto was started by the Jesuits. And this global transition, 1,000 year, a millennium transition from the decline of the original Silk Road that created tremendous wealth for 5,000 years, and the collapse now, 1,000 years later, of the Western economy, and the rebirth of the Silk Road, which has been engineered by China, and now China and Russia are partners, and Iran now has joined them.
Now, the reason why I'm involved in this project is because many of the audience members know that, well, it's May 7th, 2016, and many of the people who are watching this presentation are aware that the current chancellor of UC Davis, Linda P.V. Katehi, was recently put on administrative leave by President of the University of California System, Janet Napolitano.
Right.
And Ms. Moret here today is going to be bringing together this incredible research she's done in the area of ancient history in reference to the ancient Iranian bloodlines and connect it to what's going on right here and now at the University of California, Davis. And this shows you the importance of this deep humanities civilizational study that's purposely been excluded from the curriculum so that we have generations of of supposedly educated people who are unable to do any type of analytical work that's going to help ensure our survival, our planet's survival, land, sea, and air, and the animal species, including ourselves.
That's just
So
correct.
we're gonna drill down in that area, please.
And I really want to thank you for the support that you've given me, and encouragement, and the recognition that this is an important part of research, the ancient history that practically no one knows about. And I used to read a lot, read books and read history and believe all of that, but I just got more and more confused. And finally, around that time that I was going down the rabbit hole, I said, wait a minute, Confucius said, signs and symbols rule the world, not words and laws. And when I let go of that and I began trusting myself and my intuition and my experience and my insights, it changed everything. And I began looking at signs and symbols, and that's what opened all the doors. It's all right in front of us. It's there for everyone to see, but they don't know how to integrate, to relate, to put together the information to tell the real story.
I can guarantee you that this synthesis, this grand synthesis that you've managed to pull together, it's not being taught in the contemporary university.
No.
This, what we are about to present to you, ladies and gentlemen, is a paradigm buster. And the academic establishment are going to have to come in this direction and acknowledge the incredible contribution that Lorraine Murray has made. Now, she's done it with a lot of open source material, a lot of published books. Everything that she tells you is thoroughly documented. This is some of it's hypothetical, but it's thoroughly documented. It's all part of the discussion, and I hope to chime in periodically as you're laying it out for us.
You're the one who got me here.
You're giving me too much credit, but I'll take it.
Okay, do you want me to blame you?
Yes, you can blame me. I think we're all culpable.
Well, I appreciate
Cheerfully culpable.
I appreciate blaming you. So, in the '60s, when I was here at Davis, there were 7,500 students. It was primarily an agricultural school for ag economics and pomology, viticulture. It was how to grow fruits and vegetables, and they had animal science, and it was over half foreign students. And I was in absolute heaven. I loved it. It was a safe place to be. The classes were great. It was just, Davis has always been a very, very nice campus. And today, from spending time in the pig barn, I mean the real pig barn on the campus, and the dairy, and just going out in the vineyards, and it was just so wonderful. And I have come back now in the year 1916. We've driven around the campus today and looked at buildings and names on buildings.
2016.
I mean 2016, okay. Yeah.
We're doing some time slipping there.
Right.
Okay.
And, well, it's because I'm so astounded. It was like being in
I know.
1916.
It is a new, brave new world, absolutely. I'm here, and you're telling me, you're giving me this paradisical image of what UC Davis used to be like. It's completely different.
It's completely
today.
different. It's completely international. It's very new world order. It's part of the transhumanism movement. It's the ancient bloodlines are here too. These ancient Iranian bloodlines. Under the carpet. But I was able to lift the carpet, and it is Linda P.B. Katehi, who, when I started investigating her names and her origin and her associations and just her whole history, I went, oh my God, okay, now I understand what's happening.
And just for your information, ladies and gentlemen, Linda P.V. Katei was just put on administrative leave, and I think the pretext for removing her was the fact that she had spent $170,000 of university money in order to scrub her image on social media. And then there was some issue, for those of you who don't know, there was some issue about her serving on boards and receiving cash payment for that. But Lorena is going to be drilling much deeper than that. This is the official reason why she's temporarily being put out of the picture, but it goes much deeper than that. So I thought I would provide a little bit of context there. Please.
Thank you. So Linda Katei was hired from the University of Illinois in 2009 as Chancellor of UC Davis, the sixth Chancellor of UC Davis. And I was here when Merak Hall was built. It was the end of my undergraduate years here. And I knew Chancellor Emil Merak very, very well. And in fact, I was Arbor Day chairman for several years, and I planted the Merak Grove around Merak Hall in his honor, named the grove for him. And he was really a lovely man. I believe he was born in Vienna, Austria. And he was a wonderful chancellor. Students always had priority over other adults in his office. He would walk out of meetings with Congress members, with faculty members, whatever, to talk to a student. And the students were the priority. That's changed now. She came from Greece, and she came through Chicago, which means you're a very, very special person. Many people, like John Kerry's parents, came from Czechoslovakia through Chicago. Chicago is Rockefeller headquarters, and that's why they come specially. They're picked in other countries. They're selected and funded and brought here, and they immediately have good jobs and positions, and usually part of the intelligence operation of the United States. So she came with her husband from the University of Illinois. And the University of Illinois is very interesting. She's an electrical engineer, a specialist in antennas. And her husband, Spiros, it's Seragunas, is a chemical engineer in the engineering department on the campus. And it's interesting that they're both involved in very, very new world order technologies. And she's involved in the antennas. She has 19 antenna patents before she came to UC Davis. And they are all involved with the cell phones, with switching, with integrating with smart meters and other technologies. And her husband's involved in coatings and protective coatings on metals and materials. It's sort of materials science. And this is extremely important now because the huge amounts of nuclear pollution created by Chernobyl, by nuclear power plants, by our nuclear wars with depleted uranium and battlefield nukes and Fukushima. And the neutron bombs that they're using on the battlefield now, and then Fukushima on top of all of that. And there have also been several Chernobyl-level events in the Ukraine with nuclear power plants and MOX fuel, which is what caused the Fukushima disaster. And those have all been in the last year, and no one even knows about it. Mm-hmm. So what that's done is the Wigner effect. The radiation attacks the surface of metals and materials, and it disintegrates those materials. It steals electrons, and I don't know if you've ever seen if you put iron filings on a magnet and they start growing up. Well, that's what all this radiation is doing to the surface of airplanes, to thin metal like the bands that go around and hold hoses on metal nipples, for instance, in hydraulic systems on planes. And we are having a complete breakdown of the entire airline industry from entropy. The Wigner effect is basically the crumbling or the decay of materials. And we're having airplane crashes, we're having emergency landings all over the United States, and as the radiation increases and the exposure increases, it accelerates it. So here is Chancellor Katehi's husband working in a very, very critical area of research on how to coat materials and protect them from this breakdown by radiation, by nuclear pollution, and it's contaminated the entire air column. So who's behind that? Who's doing this insane poisoning of the entire planet? Well, it's the Jesuits. And the Jesuits are very, very prominent within the University of California because they came with the Spanish.
Okay, at this juncture, let me pose a question
Yes.
for the skeptics, because it's very common in this type of discussion here to single out Group A, B, or C as being the source of all the world's ills.
Mm-hmm.
And there are books on it, one, the Vatican Assassins. So one question that comes immediately to mind is that, are we talking about one singular group? Are we talking about one group in many different guises, different manifestations? Or are we talking about competing groups, Jesuits being one of many? Could you please explain that before we move forward?
Basically, when you look into literature, for instance, in the 1600s in Czechoslovakia, there was I believe he was a priest named Comenius, and he wrote a book about, it was sort of an epic tale, I guess, and he described in that people sitting around together trying to come up with a global poison that would kill many, many people close by and far away. And they were talking about genocide. And if you go back some more into the Bible, you will also find mention of a global genocide. And you will also be shocked at the recommendation to good Christians to go, or Jews too, to go into regions and to kill all of the people and to burn all of their buildings.
To salt the earth.
And salt the earth and destroy all their
destroy the firstborn sons.
All their idols, yes. And so this is basically the Jesuit embrace, enfold, extinguish. It's the secret history of the Jesuits. And the interests behind the Jesuits, the entities that created the Jesuits during the Renaissance in Italy, it was none other than Alessandro Farnese, a Persian. From ancient Persia, his family came through Cappadocia in eastern Turkey, eventually to Italy, and they founded the first 10 Etruscan cities in Italy. And when those were razed, they destroyed them, and they created the Roman Empire. The Romans, the Etruscans, the Holy Roman Empire, they're all Iranians, they're all Persians, it's all Persian blood. Italians are Iranians. Their practices, their beliefs, their food, their clothing attire. The Pope, for instance, wears a papal tiara dome, the papal dome, which is called the papal tiara. Well, that's what men in charge of tribes in Central Asia wear. They wear those very large domed hats. And some of the women do also if they're a leader of the community. And then the red slippers that the Pope wears, those are Central Asian slippers. You see them in India a lot and in Asia. So there are many cultural ties and legends and religious practices that indicate over and over and over again that the Italians are really Iranians. Mm-hmm. And Romania was named for the Roman soldiers, the Iranian equestrian nomadic fighters, warriors, were brought to Romania, to Eastern Europe, and they were the soldiers, the Roman soldiers for the Roman Empire. So you see this fingerprint of Iranian DNA everywhere. And 14,000 years ago, DNA studies of a particular Iranian tribe indicate there was a mutation in the DNA, and it caused different extremes of albinoism. So the most extreme expression is red hair and blue eyes, light blue eyes. And then more moderate expressions are blonde hair, green eyes, hazel eyes, gray eyes. You see a lot of Afghanis with gray eyes. And so now you can walk around the Davis campus or get on a train or walk by some friends sitting on the steps of a building, and you can start talking to them, and you can tell they have Iranian blood. But it has to be from both parents. It's a recessive gene. So that really got me started. Mm. And
now it's my understanding that Aryan came from Iranian. That's the
right.
synonym. So
that's right.
It has migrated down into our most recent history, the history of World War II.
Yes.
Global depression.
Yes.
So what I'm hearing from you is that this extensive history that goes back millennia, right?
Yeah, thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
Yes.
We're witnessing I don't know if it's the end game or not, but we're witnessing the contemporary expression of this bloodline in 2016. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I don't know where you're going with this, but perhaps Linda Kate, where does someone like her fit into this grand scheme?
Well, I had to understand why she was brought to UC Davis. Why
Right.
was she hired?
We know about the antennas.
Yes. And then I discovered she and her husband were both working in technologies that were very relevant to the New World Order agenda. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. Then I started looking at her name and the origin mm-hmm. of the name. So her name is Linda, which is probably an American name that she took on when she came here, P.B. Katehi. And Pisti is what the P stands for. Her first name is Pisti, her real name. And that's a Hungarian name for crowned or victorious. And that name was given to royal babies only.
She's royalty.
She's royalty.
She's of a royal bloodline.
Yes. And the Hungarians are from Central Asia. The early Greek, that word pisti in early Greek is Stephanos, Stephen. So that's what it means in all the languages of Europe and ancient languages of Europe. But that's not her name. It's Pisti, which is Hungarian. The Hungarians came from Central Asia. Mm-hmm. So that was a first name probably in her family, but it's a man's name, which indicates even more that it was an important family name. Even though she was a girl, she may have been the firstborn, and they gave that name to her. That's what happened to me. Loren is a man's name. And then pistis appears in Gnostic texts, which are related to Zoroastrian, the ancient Iranian religion, in the 3rd to 4th century A.D. And then Pistici is in a province of Mentera in southern Italy, and the ancient name is Basilicata. Basilica, the churches, grand churches, and so forth. Now, Pistici, the chi means the bloodline or the stock of the Pisti people or the Pisti tribe. So there's her link there with Pisti to Basilicata, and her second middle name is Basile, which refers to Basilicata. Basile is a last name. Basilicata is it's in the southern part of Italy, as I said, and it refers to basilica and these ancient, very, very grand churches. Now, it's really interesting that in the 4th century there was a Saint Basilios from that same name, who was the bishop of Caesarea, Roman Empire, and he was one of 4 men who started the Eastern Orthodox Church. So he was involved with Constantine and the whole schism between the Catholic Church and the ones who did not want to submit, the Christians who didn't want to submit to the Pope. So you see she has a royal, religious, high-level religious background, and you would probably call her part of the papal nobility. So then kate, okay, what does katehi mean? Well, I looked up katehi. There was only one reference to it, and it was to a town, a village in Uttar Pradesh, which is northern India, and it's where the ancient Iranians spilled over the Himalayas from Central Asia when their populations built up too much, and it's in the eastern part of the southern side of the Himalayas. Very, very old. All of these names and the roots of her names and all the associations go back before the Christian period, before the Greeks even. So she is very ancient Iranian. Now, kate, if you take the I off, is a very rare rice that is grown on the Caspian slope in Gilan province to the west in northern Iran. And it's actually where Stalin was born. Stalin was Iranian. He was not Russian.
Or Georgian.
Or Georgian. He was Iranian.
Okay.
And I have pictures of him when he was a young man.
Sure.
And so the mother of Ataturk was also from Gilan. Now, this rice is the precursor, or it's the arborio rice of the Italians that the Iranians took to Italy. Arborio rice is an ancient rice the Iranians grew on the Caspian Sea. So that was also kate. There are villages in Iran, in Fars, Gazvin, Khorasan, and Isfahan that are kate, and that those are all very, very old centers for the Iranian culture. So there we have absolutely solid evidence what her roots are.
Now, if I could boil it down,
yes,
we see that ostensibly Linda P.B. Katehi was brought in because of her expertise in this antenna technology, which I hope you'll talk about its applications
Yes.
currently.
Yes.
19 unique patents credit to her, and then there's her husband, who is a specialist in these coatings or material science. So that's the exoteric reason why they were brought in.
Yes,
Right.
right.
But what I'm hearing is there's a much deeper metaphysical or esoteric
Yes.
reason why she was brought here to UC Davis
Yes.
and into the UC system.
Yes.
And this drama that's unfolding now, it might be a Punch and Judy show. That's what we're trying to figure out here. It might be just a dumb show for the public. And if so, it's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
If this hypothesis,
Yes.
it's a very strong one, I must admit. But as the evidence accumulates, it'll be much more compelling, probably elevated to the level of theory. But I think we're in a very dangerous position if we have such people like this who are helming a major institution. And I hope you will talk about her relationship to, because you mentioned her in passing, Janet Napolitano and her background.
Yes.
Others of that I guess they call them root races. These royal lines that are
Right.
controlling the destiny of humanity to the present. Please.
Well, some of the others who are on the main stage today, Janet Napolitano, she's from the province, from where Naples is, right next to Basilicata.
She's the University of California president, by the
Yes.
way, ladies and gentlemen, just
Yes.
for your information. Please go.
And she is from the province of Calabria, which is right next to the province Basilicata that that Chancellor Katehi came from. And Leon Panetta is another one. Leon Panetta, who was Secretary of Transportation under Clinton. Then he was head of the CIA under Obama for 2 years, and then he was moved to Secretary of Defense. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. Gee, what ties all of those together? It's drugs. Yeah, Clinton built the Mena Airport in Arkansas to bring China white heroin. The Chinese were paying back the Rockefellers for the development funds they loaned China. And so he built the airport. It's a free trade zone. The U.S. government has no jurisdiction. The Walmart trucks and the Tyson chicken trucks go into that airport. They pick up the heroin, and they're the distributors around the United States.
Just as a footnote, ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Hopsicker has produced a DVD series, and he's written books on this very system. It may sound bizarre, crazy. It's never really hit the general public's attention, but what Loren is saying here has been explored and exposed by a number of investigative journalists. If you care to follow up on it, check out the work of Daniel Hopsicker.
Yes, that's correct. And also Dope Incorporated, Britain's opium war against the U.S. Well, this is a lot more than the opium war against the U.S. This is part of this global dope economy that's 5 times greater than the legitimate economy of the world. And so this Mena Airport and Panetta's time in the CIA, of course, they run all the drugs, and then the Secretary of Defense. Well, the military is very involved in the drug racketeering, so forth and so on. I mean, that's what the Vietnam War was about. It was getting opium from the Himalayan foothills because Turkey stopped growing opium poppies. And so they had to find another source. And it's amazing because drugs are just flooding the United States now. And for the last about 8 years, 6 or 8 years, I've been reading JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and I'd never seen articles about heroin addiction. Well, they're reporting it like in every other article now in JAMA and what states it's going into. And it seems heroin use seems to increase when we're having wars or military conflicts in other countries, and it's because the soldiers are self-medicating. The depleted uranium weapons and the weaponry residue that they're exposed to is making them so sick they're going on heroin to just ease the pain. But now, in 2016, I'm getting a lot of feedback from students at Davis that the Davis campus and off campus is flooded with heroin.
See, I never would have known that.
Yes.
Yeah, that completely bypassed me. I thought maybe crystal methamphetamine, or crank, that I knew about. I know about marijuana and, alcohol, but I didn't understand that heroin had become so popular. I understand in the Northeast, however, in states like Vermont,
Yes.
there's all these different overdoses with upper middle class,
Yes.
professional, quote unquote, white people.
That's one of the first places it started that I read about
In Vermont.
JAMA. Yes,
In Vermont.
in Vermont.
So it's linked to this larger network of
It's a
Dope
network.
Incorporated.
Yes. We're talking about a global network with one template carrying all of this out.
Mhm.
And originates with those ancient Iranian bloodlines.
Mhm.
And they have 10 bloodline families that sit on a council, and they're the ones who advise the Jesuits. The Jesuits work for the Iranian bloodlines, and the Jesuits were created by Alessandro Farnese, who became Pope Paul III in the Renaissance, and Fidel Castro is pure Iranian ancient bloodline, and he's directly descended from Pope Paul III.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that one for us here. Fidel Castro,
Fidel
the
Castro.
idol of all the left
Yes.
liberal progressives
Yes.
in academia,
Yes.
the liberator
Yes.
of El Pueblo.
Yes.
That Fidel Castro,
That's Fidel Castro.
the one who is actually one of the richest, most wealthy person in the world.
He is from
Please.
He's from the papal nobility family,
Mm-hmm.
and he's from the Dukes of Castro. And Pope Paul III had 3 sons, and he gave each of them a dukedom. The Duke of Castro, the Duke of Piacenza, which is a city in northern Italy. That's where Castro's father was born.
And you've done the genealogies.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Just so the
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen understand that
And-
this is just not fantasy. This is
And the third dukedom that Pope Paul III gave to his sons was the Duke of Parma.
Mhm.
And so I was really shocked, and then I started looking at Spanish land grants in California. And there was a U.S. Supreme Court lawsuit in the 1850s. And when the Spanish government turned over their Spanish colonies in North America to the United States government, there was a treaty made, the Treaty of
Guadalupe Hidalgo.
Guadalupe and Hidalgo.
1848.
Yes, that's right. And the agreement between the two governments was that land grant holders, Spanish land grant holders, would be allowed to retain the land they were granted by the Spanish.
Mhm.
And as soon as the land was turned over to the U.S. government, the state of California immediately sued to counteract, to reverse that treaty, because they wanted all the land. And during that process, the U.S. Supreme Court ended up reviewing it, and they asked for all land grant people claiming they had Spanish land grants
Title search.
to submit their claims, and the Supreme Court looked at each case and ruled whether it was a valid claim or not. And so out of 850 claims that were made approximately, they awarded, or they upheld 670. And then I started looking at the names of the grantees, and I was shocked because the greatest number and the largest amount of land was granted to people with the last name Castro. And then I noticed what counties and what towns, because that's listed too, the modern towns, modern cities, and almost all of the UC, almost all of the University of California campuses are where Castro land grants are.
It's beginning to come into focus now.
And the Livermore Nuclear Weapons Lab, Livermore is a Spanish land grant to the Castros also. Okay. So then I said, oh God, there's really a connection. And then I looked at UC Davis and I said, my God, they submitted a bid to have the CERN most advanced collider built here at UC Davis. And it is
You're talking about the Large Hadron
the Large
Collider.
Hadron Collider.
Okay.
Yes, and Japan bid on it, Davis bid on it, or California did, and somehow it ended up half in Switzerland and half in France. And I asked Laurence, why did they do that? He said, well, then neither France nor Switzerland own it. Someone else controls it. And so that would be these vested interests I'm talking about. And actually, it's those hidden bloodlines that funded the development of HARP and the collider from the very beginning.
Let's go back to
Yes.
Lawrence Livermore.
Okay.
Because this seems to be the institution that was at the dawn of this
Right.
self-destructive hostage, high-level techno-hostage taking
Right.
situation, this extortion scheme that you're going to hopefully
Right.
outline first.
Right.
And perhaps you can talk about your own experience at Lawrence Livermore.
Yes.
You worked there for a time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I worked at Livermore Nuclear Weapons Lab from 1989 to 91. And I worked on the WIP project Waste Isolation Pilot Program in New Mexico, which was to bury nuclear waste underground. And all attempts to make a storage facility for nuclear waste have failed in the United States, all of them. And when the New Mexico one failed, they just said, we're going to do it in Nevada. It's the last place we can do it, at the Nevada test site where they've done 1,300 nuclear bomb tests. And even that has failed because they put it in an active volcanic zone. So 32 earthquakes a month happen where they're planning to store nuclear waste safely for 250,000 years. I don't think so. And so this is so crazy. It's very, very crazy. But let's see, what was I talking about?
We're talking about your background at Livermore, because what I'm trying to establish is that you've done this external research, but you're also have lived this. I mean, you've worked in these institutions, and so you're also bringing the insights of someone who was working in the belly of the beast.
So in 1991, I packed all my stuff in my car one day, and I drove out the gate of the Livermore lab, and I left my keys and my pager in the guardhouse, and I went home. I fired them. They didn't fire me. And with the University of California, they've gone into chancellors' and vice chancellors' offices and marched them, the guards, to the border of the campus, and said, get out of here, you're fired. And they were never allowed to remove their personal items. And so I said, I'm not going to let them do that to me. I'm leaving this place, and I'm taking all my stuff, and I'm going to fire them. And they've never stopped retaliating against me since then. That was 1989, but 91. But I'm glad that I've had this experience. It's been hell in a lot of ways, but You have to be in their house. You have to live in their house to know who they are and what they are, and so that when you leave, you know how to challenge them. You know how to expose them, because what they're doing is immoral, it's illegal, it's insane. They are destroying this planet without our permission, without informing us, and without even having a good reason for doing it. They're just doing it because they can. And I think that's what really woke me up and just changed my whole life, was taking this on.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the biographical element, because I sense there's something that's driving you that goes deeper than pure intellectual curiosity.
Oh no, it's because I love people. It's
Yes.
because I love
Humanity.
nature. I love living things. We live in a beautiful world. The earth is so beautiful.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a game. This is not an academic
No.
exercise, neither for Loren or for myself.
No.
I am in their house. I am working in the belly of the beast. I have suffered, and I'm not going to talk about it too much today, the repercussions of asking certain questions about my own workplace, which is I'm
Yes.
entitled to do as a citizen, as a sovereign human being, as an academic, as an American. I'm entitled to do that, and I will exercise those rights to the best of my ability. But it takes research such as this, cutting edge research such as this, that'll provide us the intellectual, the historical, the analytical framework to understand what we are facing. Because so far, these people have been very good in veiling the truth and hiding it, because the Rockefellers own the University of Chicago. The Russell Trust runs Yale University. All these bloodlines control information, scholarship, and every single aspect, and sciences, of course, almost every single aspect of our lives that shape our world.
And what I learned at UC Berkeley, I was working on gender equity issues and minority equality and things like that in the early 90s. And there were 500 lawsuits against the University of California for gender discrimination, and also ethnic issues also. And so I started investigating, well, what is the University of California? Why are they breaking all these laws and everything? Well, it turns out that Dwight and Gilman started the land grant, the U.S. land grant program, and that was to have the U.S. government allot land in each state to build a state university.
This is the Morrill Act,
Yes,
correct?
that's
Yes.
correct. And it was to educate the farmers, the pioneers, to create teachers and military and farmers, to educate them more. And it was to create a bigger economy. It was to create wealth, new wealth in the United States. It was to benefit everyone, not just the businessmen and the oligarchs, but also the people. And so Dwight and Gilman, they had everything to do with setting up UC Berkeley, which was the first Berkeley campus. So they were very intimately involved with the University of California. And then they went on to establish the other state universities and colleges. But from the very beginning, all of these institutions were exempt from state laws.
This is what I found out.
Yes.
They are a government within a government.
That's right.
A sovereign entity.
And they actually were set up to benefit the oligarchs and industrialists and so forth who went to the Ivy League colleges.
Sure.
So the state universities were set up to train workers for the ruling elite. And so you need to understand the history and the ancient history of issues that you're involved with before you can ever really understand what is really happening.
And as a footnote, President Gilman, who was the first president to really put his stamp on the University of California system, was a member of the Order of Death. He was a Skull and Bones person.
They were both Skull and
They
Bones.
were both Skull and Bones
Yes.
people, and perhaps we can range into this area a little bit later, because there's an occult overlay when we're talking about this.
Absolutely, very, very much so. And the origin of Skull and Bones was in Europe, in Germany.
Sure, 1822.
Yes, that's right. So it all sounds bizarre and everything until you begin putting all of these pieces together, and then you find more and more evidence, and pretty soon you have an airtight case using government data.
Sure. And published books by
Yes.
quote-unquote reputable scholars,
Right.
who are always just slightly unable to complete the picture,
Right.
purposely,
Right.
because the academic profession does not allow you to fully bring all these different elements of knowledge and information together
Right.
in a comprehensive whole that really gives away the game.
Right.
This is why what we're doing today here is
Yes.
so exciting to me.
So let's go back and look at the history.
Please.
Chancellor Katehi was hired from the University of Illinois, which is a military-based university. It's where the first computer and computer language was made for the Navy. The Navy is there. It's their research lab, their university. And ENIAC was the first computer, and it had a language. And then later on, Fortran came out of the University of Illinois also. But that's where Katehi and her husband landed.
Mm-hmm.
And there she ended up, her grad students, of course, did the research, but she ended up with 19 antenna patents. And these antennas now, waveforms, are the new mechanism to enslave society, to take over the whole entire world. That's what HARP is. There are HARP bases all over Antarctica, and that's in training the Earth's magnetic field. And the animal studies for mind control were done here and are still being done here on the UC Davis campus.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in the 60s, the students would come back from that secret facility, and they were students who did work studies. So they worked in the monkey colony, and they said the monkeys have the top of their heads cut off and their wires coming out of them, and they can transmit waveforms to them and make them just climb up and down in their cage all day long. They can command them to do anything they want to. And it sounded so out there that I didn't pay very much attention to it. But now I understand as I see this all unfolding and other experiences I had.
Speaking of the literature, ladies and gentlemen, you might want to check out a book by Dr. Jose Delgado.
Yes.
Called Toward a Psycho-Civilized Society.
Yes.
And you have photographs in there with the monkeys, the simians,
Yes.
with part of their skulls removed. And I think the technology was called the stem sievers.
Yes.
So this is decades old technology.
Yes.
Who knows what they're doing now? But you're saying that the antenna technology that Linda, quote-unquote, P.B. Katehi, is responsible for is integral to this new phase in mind control, or behavioral control?
It's the delivery system.
The delivery system. Okay.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
And Delgado also wrote a book, The Biology of Aggression. And so they can use these frequencies to cause food riots. They can use these frequencies as in Rwanda, that big, huge massacre in Rwanda. Those were Russian, Ukrainian oligarchs who sent thugs down to Rwanda. The whole place had been wired up with antennas. These guys had been hooked up to computers, and they were programmed before they went down to Rwanda to carry out the slaughter. And it was plain and simply so that the Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs could steal all the wealth of the colonists. Mm-hmm. And the order was to slaughter all of them, every single white person, and steal all of their wealth, go into the banks, strip their bank accounts, strip take all their securities from safe deposit boxes, and the Africans there had no money, so they were used to cover the slaughter of the
Sure.
white people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, closer to home, this is speculative, of course. Did you see something similar taking place recently down in Burlingame, California, when the social justice warriors started rioting and
Oh.
acting up?
I
Is
didn't
that?
know about that.
Oh yes, yes, overturning
Uh-huh.
police cars,
Uh-huh.
vandalizing them, beating up supporters of Party A, B, or C. This is when Donald Trump came into town
Oh, I
earlier
remember
this
that.
week. Yes.
Yeah.
But what you're describing
Yes.
there was caught on camera by
Yes.
people such as
Yes.
InfoWars news
Yes.
gatherers.
Yes.
And it's been seen by millions of people all over the world.
Yes, that's-
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see a real
Yes.
live, because Rwanda might be removed in time and distance from us, but if you want to see this type of control being rolled out here and now, right in our area, in the United States of America, take a look at that YouTube footage and break it down. I suspect that the antenna arrays were out there. Of course.
Absolutely,
You agree
they're
with
there.
that?
Absolutely, 100%. All of the UC campuses now, the street corners have been taken up. They've put surveillance and other technology packages into the ground. They dug down 5 feet, and then they cemented it in so that it can't be removed. And it's hooked up to the street lights, to the smart meters, to cell phones. It's all integrated now. That's what Katehi's technology is about. It's about integrating all of that. So you get a huge array of antennas that are all integrated, and you control everything.
So the HARP model has been regionalized or localized.
It's been localized. It's been made more granular.
Mm-hmm.
It's more powerful, but it's more miniaturized.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten smaller and smaller and more efficient, and had a bigger and bigger impact.
Okay.
So it's a creeping mechanism for controlling humanity.
Mm-hmm. I've been teaching here at UC Davis for 20 years now, and beginning about 8 years ago, perhaps even 10 years ago, I began to see a 180-degree shift in intelligence level, intellect, analytical ability, expressive ability, intellectual
Yes.
ability, of course, I mentioned.
Yes.
And in attending that, I also saw a gradual acceleration of hostility and
Yes.
anger.
Yes.
And much of this has been directed towards myself
Yes.
and towards other faculty
That's,
people.
That's right.
And I'm reading that this has been taking place coast to coast, north to south at different universities. So where do the students, undergraduates, I'm at the university, where do they fit into this picture? Are they being used as shock troops for this transformation?
Oh, absolutely. It's even
Please
worse
elaborate.
than that.
Yeah.
But let me tell you what it's like in the 60s. In the
Okay.
60s, when I was a student at UC Davis, I used to go home to Santa Barbara for holidays and summers. And I noticed, or just Easter break or something, and I noticed that when I was driving back on Highway 5, I'd start getting really depressed about coming back to Davis. Something, this horrible depression and overwhelming fear and uneasiness came over me, and I just never could understand it. But it would always start about 150 miles from here. And so very recently, I was reading about HARP facilities in California. Well, there's a HARP facility in Visalia, and it's to transmit Voice America to countries around the world. And there's always also a naval air base in Visalia, a U.S. Navy air base. So that transmission was coming out of that HARP facility in Visalia.
I see.
And that was a long time ago. That was in the 60s. But recently, a woman in Texas, I was telling her about that. She said, my friend has a son who's at Davis now, and he's complaining about the same thing. And there's also a very, very large antenna on the south side of the freeway on your way from Davis into Sacramento. There's a huge antenna out in the middle of a field. That's also a Navy antenna. And that's integrated with the HARP technology and with antennas up in Oregon.
Mm.
So they've been doing this since the 50s.
My gosh. So these
And
are like carrier waves that are
these are,
affecting
yes,
behavior.
these are ELF, extra long frequency, or ultra long frequency carrier waves, and they put the applications on that carrier wave. So right now they're transmitting suicide frequencies that make people commit suicide. And this is all over the Davis campus.
Mm.
It's all over California. There's signs and billboards all over San Francisco, right on the main Market Street. They're huge 10-foot high displays along the sidewalk right next to the curb. And they're posters with hotlines, for suicide hotlines. If you feel like committing suicide, call the hotline. And they have it on the other side also, so the pedestrians walking down the sidewalk can see it. Mm-hmm. And my Native American friends have said the young people are committing suicide 5, 4, and 5 a night on the reservations. Mm-hmm. And the reservations have, the Indian reservations in the United States, they have the mineral rights to them. They were put on the poorest land, but they have 85% of the energy sources. The uranium, the coal, whatever that creates energy, the oil and gas, and they had the misfortune of being given that great wealth, and they've said to me many times, why can't we just give them the mineral rights and have them leave us alone? I said, they don't work that way. So these technologies, now what is so alarming about what's happening in the universities is that in the fall of 2015, less than a year ago, the state university campuses were turned over to Satanism.
Okay, let's stop at this juncture. How do we substantiate that? Where do we look in order to verify that claim?
Well,
all right, because we're doing solid
right.
scholarship here.
And this has to do with Katehi also.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
Okay, just a minute.
So in the fall, we had a rollout of,
yes.
of the satanic agenda.
Yes.
All right.
So I started seeing satanic symbols on and off the UC Berkeley campus. Mm-hmm. And for instance, I saw the head of the goat, which
Baphomet.
Yeah, Baphomet.
The goat of Mendes.
In students' windows, I started seeing stars turned upside down, so that the two points of the stars represented the goat's horns, mm-hmm. and I saw American flags turned upside down and backwards on the balconies of the students' apartments. That was representing overthrow of the U.S. government. Laurence and I have recorded the ski team, UC Berkeley ski team, in the house next door to us during parties. They were drinking and dancing and everything, and they were talking in loud voices about overthrowing the U.S. government. Mm-hmm.
No, this is anecdotal, though.
We have tape recordings.
Well, you've recorded it, but you're interpreting it. So do you have any sort of because I've been reading in the corporate press about the growing popularity of religions such as Wicca. So they're just portraying it as a form of religious expression rather than a satanic takeover. I think, I agree with you. There's something deeper here.
There's much more. Okay.
Yes, but I want to, for the sake of the skeptics out there, beyond the anecdotal, and I know you've recorded and you've photographed these signs. I've seen them as well. YouTube is full of, there's a satanic ritual taking place at the Super Bowl, at the American Music Awards. The internet's full of that type of display. So we know something's going on. I wanted to find out definitively, is there some sort of Department of Defense or something like equivalent to the National Security Memorandum 200 that was workshopped, a white paper that says we are going to convert the universities and college in the United States to Satanism?
It doesn't come out directly like that, but it's happening not just in California, just on the UC campuses.
Mm-hmm.
It's happening across the United States. It's happening in Europe. For instance, in the UC campuses now, in the land grant university campuses around the U.S., there's very heavy recruiting with very young entering students, female students, to become prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of student prostitution now, which is encouraged by these sort of underground networks, and they're coming from the campus. But in Europe, they have referred to this coming out of the military. And we know that when the U.S. Destroyed Yugoslavia, DynCorp went in, and the first thing they did was to begin recruiting young women who were starving to death and living in horrible conditions to be prostitutes. Mm-hmm. And I saw those beautiful Yugoslavian girls in Tokyo, in Roppongi, which is the nightclub area of Tokyo. And they were obviously on drugs. They were standing in doorways in pairs, and they were looking for customers. Mm-hmm.